When you first open Excel, you face a page that looks something like this. Basically, we have a series of cells. Each cell has a unique address which can be seen in the address box. Now, by clicking here, I can see that this one is in G7, this one is in B3, and so on. So we have columns that go from top to bottom, and they're designated by letters, and we have rows that go from left to right that are designated by numbers. So each cell has a unique cell address. Cells themselves can have various information put in them. They can have text put into them, or they can have numbers put into them. We can also put things called formulas and functions, which I'll get onto in a moment. Anything that goes in a cell can be formatted in a very similar way as you would do in Word. So we can change the font size or the font style. We can change the font color. We can even fill cells with color to make them look more interesting, and we can do that over a whole series of cells if we choose to, and we can edit them at any point. If we don't want any color in them at all, we can select no fill. Excel is very good at dealing with numerical information, so if I put some random numbers into some cells, I can do lots of things with that. So for instance, if I want to sum or add up all of those numbers, I can use this function called AutoSum. Now a function is something that automatically does a particular job for you, and if I click on there, I can see that this is what the function looks like. So it's the sum function, and it's telling me that it's going to add up from E3 through to I3, okay, which is where the numbers are. Now if I chose to do something a little bit different, I'm going to grab these and I'm going to grab the corner box there and drag down. I've got exactly the same numbers duplicated. I could do this in a different way. I could type my own formula in, so I could say equals, and I want to add this one, and then I'm going to put the plus symbol in to this one, and so on. Now what the difference is although it's going to give me the same answer, is that I'm creating my own, in fact I don't need the last one, just need to press enter. I've created my own formula here as opposed to a function here. AutoSum works in lots of different directions, so I don't necessarily have to just do it the way that I've just shown you. I could, if I extend these down, make them some longer numbers. If I wanted to add up all these rows of 92, I could put an AutoSum in there. Now if this doesn't guess correctly, it does at the moment, so I'm going to press enter, yes. But if I say I put an AutoSum here, but actually I didn't want to add all of those, I just wanted to add the last three, all I need to do is drag my marching ants, and it will then put those into the formula. And I can always check these formulas later on, or these functions, by clicking on the cell where they are and seeing what it says up in the function box there. In terms of other basic mathematical functions or features, we can do multiplication using the star. So if I wanted to multiply those two together, I could literally say equals this one, multiply, which is shift and 8 to get the star, by F3, press enter, and that gives me my multiplication. And the same way if I want to do division, I start off with the equals to tell it there's either a feature, a function, or a formula following. This one divided by, so backslash this one, and I get my answer. Now within those values there, you can see to do with decimal places, how many points are after the decimal place. I can actually highlight cells and right click on them, and I can go to something called format, and within the format window I can do lots of different things to them. But under numbers, I might decide that I only want to have them with 2 decimal places, so I can choose 2 decimal places and my numbers become decimals. The good thing about spreadsheets is that they work live. So if I change a number, say if I change 23 to 34, watch what happens when I press enter. The multiplication actually changes at the same time. The same here, if I increase my number value there, my division takes place automatically. So these are used for modeling purposes in many places, because they work with numbers in a live arena. Something else I can do using the formatting option is to change these perhaps into currency. So again, if I highlight them and choose format cells, this time I can choose currency. I've got options for different sorts of currencies. I think we'll stick with dollars for now, that's all fine. Click OK. Now I get numeric values. I can even change those and the positions of them using exactly like I do in Word, how I want to position my numbers. If I want to tidy it up, possibly I can turn it into a table by putting a border around it. And I've got lots of border options, but I might decide that I'm going to have information that's text based in some of these to actually make things stand up. However I want to set things up, that's up to me. I can do things like bolding and centering to tidy up these features. When I'm setting up these kind of tabular kind of things, it's very interesting to see that I can do what's called series fill. So at the moment, if I type in Monday there, I grab the right hand corner and drag downwards, you'll see that it will automatically start to fill those things in for me. I can do the same thing using things like January, February. I can go in different directions. So it's a very useful feature to be able to have. Something else that I can do, if I do numbers in the same way, so if I put a 1 in here and a 2 in here, what I can do is I can grab the bottom right hand corner. This time I'm going to use my right mouse and drag, and when I let go it gives me the option of doing fill series. If I do fill series, it continues those numbers on for me. Another good thing about spreadsheets is the ability to use different tabbed views. So at the moment, a spreadsheet is the entire thing, but a spreadsheet is made up of different worksheets, and these are different worksheets here. Now, as a default, they come with 3 and they're named sheet. You can add extra ones by clicking down here to make more of them up, and we can rename them. So if I decide I want to rename this one, I'm going to call this one January, and I'm going to call the next one February. And I might call this final one end of year or something like that. Now, apart from the fact that I can switch between these different views, I can actually take information from one worksheet into another worksheet. So here I've got my worksheet set up for January, February, March, and one called end of year. So what I can do, I've got totals for each day. I could take my Monday totals and add them all up into one place at the end of year. So I'm going to say Monday here, and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to go to January, click on the Monday total and say add, and I'm going to add that now to the February one, and I'm going to add that one to the March one. Now I'm going to press enter, and that's my totals. Now what I could do is I could drag this across and it will do the next totals for me automatically. So these are adding them now from the 3 different worksheets. Okay, and if I wanted to, I can drag these across to give me the right numbers. I've obviously missed one across, so I can go one more to get the Friday, copy the Friday across to there, tidy that all up by centering it, putting a border around it. And so this now is taking continuous feedback. So if we look at that number there, 189 for Monday, I'm going to go to my February, and I'm going to change some numbers in here. I'm going to add a bigger number into there. If I now go back into my end of year total, you'll see that this has changed. So it all works in real time, which is really useful for us. Okay, we're going to look at something now to do with cell referencing, and we're going to do 2 different ones. I'm going to do one which is called relative and one which is called absolute, and this gives me a chance to show you a few other things at the same time. So for instance, if those texts, if I want them on an angle, I can format the cells, and I'm going to choose my alignment this time. So go to text, go to alignment, and I'm going to say I'm going to put those on an angle, say something like that, and say OK. So now I've got my writing on an angle. But the difference between a relative and an absolute cell reference is to do with where information comes from. So say for instance, I've got my Monday and Tuesday here adding up to 51, but perhaps I wanted to put in here, I wanted to multiply 51 by the value for A. So I can say here equals this one multiplied by this one, and I press enter. Now what happens is if I grab this handle and pull downwards, okay, it takes the next one and it multiplies it by the next one down, which is the 20. Okay, so L3 has got 20 in it, so the next one, if I look at it, is multiplying by L4. But if I carried it down again, it would come to 0 because I haven't got a 4th number. So it's saying it's relative to where the positions of everything are. So if this first one is multiplying from there to there, then the next one is going to multiply from here to here, the next one from here to here, and so on, and the final one would be from there to there, but there's nothing in there. This is called relative. Okay, relative cell referencing. Absolute is something different. So absolute, I might say I want to multiply my 51, so I'm going to say equals, I'm going to multiply this one, and I'm going to say star for multiply, and again I'm going to multiply by this one. But what I can do this time is if I go back into the formula, I want my L2 value to stay the same. So where it says L2, I can go in front of the L and I can place a dollar sign, and I can go after the L before the 2 and place a dollar sign. So instead of saying L2, it says $L $2. Press enter. This time, if I get my formula and copy it down, watch what happens. So the second time, it's still multiplying by L2, even though I've moved down one row over here. The next one, again, is still multiplying by L2, and the last one, again, is still multiplying by L2. So it doesn't matter when I drag my formula down. It's still copying the first part of the formula. It still knows it's going to be G5 instead of G4, but this time it will take my absolute cell reference instead of my relative one. This one's really useful when you want to use the same figures on a particular set of calculations. Okay, if you've got really complicated sums to do or lots of different maths, basically you can use brackets within your formulas to actually separate the different calculations that are going on. So for instance, there's 4 sets of numbers here. What I could do is I might do something like this. So I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to put a bracket on, so that's shift and 9. I'm going to add this one to this one, close my bracket, then I'm going to divide the whole thing, and I'm going to put 2 brackets now by this one added to this one, but I'm going to divide those ones by 2, and then I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 100. So if you look at the formula there, you can see it both in this cell and up in the formula box. All the use of brackets are basically keeping the various parts of calculations separate so that they create the right answer. If I press enter, then I get my answer, and obviously if I come in and I change anything in there, I should find that my answer changes to correspond with that. So this is basically using multiple brackets in order to make my calculations correct. Conditional formatting can basically be used to highlight certain things. So say for instance the answer that we're getting here, if that answer dropped below a certain value, we'll say less than 35, we want it to change to be a different colour. So what I can do here is I can click on the cell, I can choose conditional formatting, I want to go for a new rule, and I'm going to say only these cells. So I'm going to say the cell value is less than, and we'll say 35. What happens if it's less than 35? We'll click on format, and we'll make the text go colour go to red, and we'll say OK to both those things. So at the moment it's on 40. If I drop this value over here so that it becomes a lesser number, we'll see what that does. And there you can see we've dropped below 35 and my text colour has gone to red. If I go back up here and I make this into a much bigger number, it goes back, and so on. That's conditional formatting. Okay, here we've got a spreadsheet with a load of information in that we want to make a graph from. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to highlight all that kind of area first of all, make sure there's no empty spaces highlighted, only cells that contain data. I'm going to go to insert, I'm going to choose 3D column. Now that comes up, I'm going to actually put that into another worksheet. So I'm going to say move my chart. I'm going to put that into a new chart. I can rename it later, but chart 2 will do for now. Say OK. There's my chart 2, but it's overloaded with information. Okay, so what I want to do, while this is all still highlighted, I choose select data, and this gives me the opportunity now to alter the way it all kind of looks. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch the axis around. So I want to have the names of the groups at the bottom and then the numerical values up the left hand side. So I'm going to switch mine around so I can see the numerical values now, but I've still got too much data for each one, so I want to remove the ones that I no longer need. So all I really am interested in is the one that says total. So the rest of them I can get rid of. I'm just going to click on them and hit remove, and you can see as I remove each one, the number of data, the amount of data showing in the actual graph view lessens. I want to keep total, so I'll jump over to revenue, remove revenue, and remove iTunes profits. and then I'm left pretty much with the information I want. So I'm going to click OK, get rid of that. There's my chart. Everything on this chart now is editable, whether it be changing the way that the chart's going to look, or changing the actual the text, the font, whatever you want to put into there. You can change all of these things around editing afterwards, but my original data is still here, and if my data changes, then my chart changes to go to show that.